My hottest music production take is that Studio One is the best DAW, and I've been patiently awaiting a new Studio One release, but guess what? Studio One is no more. It is now Fender Studio Pro 8. And what does this mean? It means that I'll probably keep calling it Studio One because Fender Studio Pro 8 really does not roll off the tongue. But in terms of the software, a lot of the new features look pretty cool, so we're going to take a look at some of those new features today. And in terms of what's going to happen to Fender Studio Pro 8, we're going to have to see if people will keep using it or if it's just going to crash and burn. I've heard arguments on both sides. People saying that this is like when Gibson bought Cakewalk and ruined it. But I've also heard people say that, hey, Fender has better brand recognition than PreSonus, so maybe this will make the DAW better. Who knows? 24 hours later, and I'm still getting the name wrong for Fender Studio Pro 8. And I don't think it's just me that feels this way. Let's see what other people have to say on the matter. All right, shout out to Gregor, but let's see some of the comments on this official Fender Studio video. It seems like people are pretty upset about this name change. Literally, all they had to do was name it Studio One Pro 8 by Fender. Everyone would still be happy. I want to see the outtakes where Gregor mindlessly says Studio One and swears and corrects himself. That's been me this entire video. Did a 5-year-old come up with this generic sounding name? Studio One sounds professional like Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic. Fender Studio Pro sounds like a bad app on a phone. What the hell? 16-year reputation down the drain. Guy in the thumbnail can't even fake smile for this one. Is there anything nice about the name change? I'm not really seeing anything. Seriously considering changing my DAW? Trust has been shattered, oh my gosh. How long will it be until Fender ditches Studio One, Studio Pro altogether like Gibson did with Cakewalk Sonar in 2018? Like I was saying, not really seeing anything too nice, so maybe when I said I saw arguments on both sides, I really just meant I saw one argument on the pro side. Let's try another video on their channel and see if there's anything positive. Love the DAW, hate the name change. I don't like the new name. It will be Studio One forever. I agree. But enough on that. Let's actually see what's new in Fender Studio Pro 8. All right, here it is. It looks exactly like Studio One, maybe just a little more bubbly. A little bit more round in the UI, you could say. All right, let's jump into it. The first thing I noticed is a new icon up here, which looks like a session overview, similar to something you would see in Ableton. So if you have a really big session, you can kind of quickly navigate between things. I would probably never use this just because of my workflow, but if you're coming from Ableton or want to see a more condensed view of your session, I think this is a super cool feature. Another new thing I noticed right off the bat is this icon down here called Channel Overview, which again is kind of reminding me a little bit of Ableton. You can quickly see the plugins on your track, and you can do some tweaking without actually having to open the plugin, which is kind of cool. You can rearrange up here, which is nice. The stock plugins obviously are going to work better in this view and you're going to be able to click around in them. But even being able to quickly control like peak reduction on this 3A without having to open it is kind of cool. It's kind of nice. And then I wonder what's happening with the metronome. It looks a little bit different. This is actually pretty cool. So instead of having just your metronome on, your click track on, you can have a built-in drummer track as your metronome. That's pretty smart. And there's all sorts of different styles. It can be really difficult to track to just a click track, especially when it's like the first element in a song. This is honestly a really good feature. I will use this all the time. Very nice. Another point for Fender Studio Pro 8. If you're wondering how we got here in the first place, my deep love for Studio One, there's only one guy to blame: Harley.
So I want to say Alyssa complained to me for 2 or 3 years about how much they hated something about every DAW they were using. They would complain about how Pro Tools would crash or not load sessions correctly. They would complain about how Ableton wasn't flexible enough to do all the editing and comping they were wanting to be able to pull off. I got to the point where I was kind of sick of hearing them complain about these DAWs. They would talk about all these problems, and I would say, but Studio One does that perfectly. Why are you struggling with this? And they were like, oh, Studio One's not a real DAW. It's fake, whatever. And they just literally wrote me off and gaslit me for years.
Editing me here to say, sorry, Harley. Love you, girl. But let's hear what he has to say about the Fender Studio Pro of it all.
I found out that Fender was getting involved in all of this a couple days ago when Alyssa texted me, and they said, if I lose Studio One, put me down. I don't know. I think I might agree. It's just kind of the best platform. I know that's a hot take. People think it's wild when they find out I use Studio One, and I truly do not understand why. It's just so rock solid. And now back to the new features. There's also some more customization now in your track controls, which I think is pretty cool. So now instead of just seeing volume over here, you can turn on your panning and see your panning underneath your volume. I love that. I love that. I don't have anything else to say about that. I think that's great. I think that's a great feature. And another new track control is freeze, which we've always been able to freeze, but now with it being right here, it's way quicker to just render this down as audio. One thing I did want to check to see if they have
fixed is in the inspector window, which is if you select all your tracks in the last version of Studio One, if you clicked follow global transpose, it would not apply it to every track. It would just apply it to one track selected, which is annoying because then you have to go do it for all of the tracks. If you've got 100 tracks in your session and you want to change the key, bad news. So let's see if this is fixed now. Select all these tracks, follow global transpose, and look at that. Look at that. This is amazing news. That just made my night. There's also 2 new amp sims, which since Fender owns this now, they better be good. Oh, dang. I got really distracted just playing around with those amps. They honestly sound really good. Really good. I wanted to pop in to give a little bit more attention to the amps. I kind of glossed over them because I was so distracted just playing with them, but there really are so many new amps and effects. We've got all of these new guitar amps. Crazy, so many. Dang, we're still going. That's a lot. And there's a good amount of bass amps as well, and so many pedals. So honestly, if you're newer to production and guitar is your main instrument, this would be a great DAW where you have all of these built-in guitar effects. You don't need to buy a third-party amp sim, and you can really just get cooking. And they sound great. And if you guys have watched the channel before, you might remember Matt, and he's got something he wants to say.
What up, everybody? It's Matchler, coming to you live from a family vacation. I just want to say that I use Studio One. I approve this message, I mean, Studio Pro, shit. I approve this message, and this video is sponsored by Rory. I'm gonna go try and snowboard now.
The last major things I wanted to check out were the updates to Sample 1 and Impact. Sample 1 finally looks like it wasn't made in 2007. This is amazing. I've honestly really liked Sample 1. There's some really cool stuff built into the original one, but this looks so much better. Let me just bring this splice sample in. You can change the fade in and out. Dang, that filter sounds so good. Dang, this drive? I'm kind of mind blown. This sounds really good. All right, Sample 1, you got a little facelift. I'm going to use you more, it would seem. And then Impact. Let's see. Okay, so we can turn on a filter for each drum. Nice. And if we want to edit the sample length, we can do that and give it a little bit of a fade out. And it might seem silly to say, but if something looks bad, like the old Impact looked kind of bad, it's not inspiring to use. You don't ever think to open it. But this, I'm more likely to open and then play out my drums instead of just dragging samples onto the grid. So that's really cool. Those are some of my new favorite features that I found in Fender Studio Pro 8. And I really hope that this is not the end of this being a really great DAW. I made a whole video about why I think Studio One Redacted is the best DAW ever. So if you want to watch that, you can click on the screen now. But please, if this is the end of Studio One, put me out of my misery. And I'll talk to you freaks later.